Well, hello there, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar. My name is Josephine Williams, and I'm Events and Partnerships Manager at IDP, and I'm the Conference Manager for AIEC. On behalf of IAA and IDP, thank you very much for joining us. We're absolutely delighted to have colleagues from all around Australia and also from overseas. So a very big welcome to you all. Before we go any further, I would like to acknowledge that I'm hosting this webinar from the lands of the Bunurong people, and I pay my respects to their elders, both past and present. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you all are today. Now, joining me today for this session is Louise Gould, Director of Development and External Relations at the Faculty of Education at Monash, and also the Program Chair for AIEC. Hello, Louise.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here.
We have lots to get through, but first, just a few housekeeping notes and some important announcements. So please remember that this is a webinar, so if you want to ask a question, we ask that you please use the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, usually on the Zoom control bar that's at the bottom of your screen. We will be taking questions at the end of the webinar, and if we can't get through all the questions today, we'll then take them offline and post some FAQs on the website later this week. And a reminder, this is being recorded, and the recording will also be available from tomorrow on our website. So, like I said, we got a lot to cover, but as you are aware, we are less than 6 months away from hosting AIEC on the Gold Coast this October. So we are still moving ahead with our plans to deliver a hybrid event, meaning that attendees will have the option of attending in person or virtually. The dates are the 5th to 8th of October 2021. This is the first week in October, so not the 2nd or the 3rd, which is what we've normally done in past years. So do make sure that you mark this in your calendars and you don't miss that important week. Now, if we've learned anything from COVID in the last year, is that things can change at any moment. So we are also preparing in the event that we have to deliver the event completely online. Our goal, though, is to do everything that we can to meet face-to-face physically at the Gold Coast this October. We are closely monitoring the developments around the vaccine and the pandemic, but also its implications on vaccine rollout and its impact on travel, on border closures, on health and safety, and regulations around indoor gatherings. So we'll be following the advice of the Australian government and the local health authorities to ensure that we can deliver an event that is safe this October. So in saying that, I would like to thank all of our sponsors for their support this year. More than anything, it is very, very, very much appreciated. Now, if you want to stay connected with us, or you want to receive more information, or you would like to receive timely updates and news about the conference, you can follow us on social media. You can visit our website, where we will be uploading and updating a lot of information in the lead up to the conference. You can sign up for a newsletter, and you can also email us directly to our inbox, aiec@idp.com. So, like I said, we've got a lot to cover, but first I just wanted to just give you an overview of what we hope to cover today. So first of all, I'll give you an update on what we mean by a hybrid conference and what that means for both attendees and speakers. And then Louise will talk to us a little bit about the theme this year, and specifically the review and selection criteria for the call for proposals. She'll be focusing on what makes a proposal stand out, and also what are the common reasons of rejection, so that you can avoid them when you submit your proposal. And Louise will also talk to us about key interest areas and session types. And then I'll finish off with a few tips to help you prepare your proposal online using the Exceed system. So do's and don'ts that can maybe give you an edge. Whew, Louise, I'm tired just talking about that. What do you think we get started? I think Louise has
Yeah,
gone
no,
on.
sorry. I'm quite excited too. So let's get on with this.
All right. Okay, fantastic. All right. So what do we mean by a hybrid event? So what that means is, like I said, there'll be an in-person audience and there'll be an online audience. Our plan is for the event to be broadcast from the convention center and utilizing those spaces and the technology and the AV and the staff at the convention center. So all of the plenaries will be live streamed, and some of the concurrents will also be live streamed through the virtual platform. Most sessions, though, will be recorded and then uploaded to the virtual platform for everyone to view on demand. There will also be some pre-recorded material and content uploaded prior to the conference, hopefully about 1 or 2 weeks before we actually get to that first week in October. Now, all of that content will be online and available for up to 3 months after the event, which is something really exciting. And also the content that we put up on the virtual platform will also be available for people who are attending in person. So if you remember those days where someone had to decide which session they were going to go to, and there was like 2 or 3 sessions they wanted to go, now they can attend one and they can watch the other 2 at a later date from the comfort of their own home. Now, for speakers, what does that mean? So all of you are here today because you're interested in speaking at AIEC. So we, for the first time in AIEC history, we're actually accepting proposals for speakers to speak and present remotely. However, due to the complexities of live streaming and also to the costs involved, we will probably favor people who can actually travel or have the intention of traveling to the Gold Coast. Now, in saying that, we will be reviewing and considering all proposals. So please don't let that stop you from putting in a great idea. We do think that it will be easier for us to manage when all the speakers are presenting in person or all the speakers are presenting virtually. But if you do have a mix, again, we will consider that. It's just that it does add a little bit of complexity from an operational perspective. You know, this is a really great opportunity for international speakers who have wanted to attend AIEC in the past. So for all of our international colleagues out there, either on the call today or if you know of someone out there, please let them know that this is an opportunity for them to put in a proposal. Now, I'm sure there'll be other questions about this, so we'll be able to take questions at the end of the webinar. Please do submit your questions throughout the presentation using the Q&A button on the bottom control bar of your screen. And then we will pick out the questions at the end of the presentation. So, Louise, I think it's over to you now to tell us a little bit more about the theme this year.
Okay, thanks, Jo. Hi again, everybody. Now, look, I'll try and go through some of this pretty quickly. Each year, obviously, the conference has a theme that we focus some of our keynotes and other sessions around. This year, we've gone with New Horizons. We just wanted something positive and inspirational and looking forward rather than looking back. We've also decided this year to introduce sub-themes. We haven't done that before, and I'll talk about key interest areas a bit later, which are a bit different. But the broad sub-themes that we think a lot of sessions will fall into are the 5 that you see on the screen. So global challenges, the digital innovation, particularly what's happened sort of post-COVID and moving forward, the life and learning. So that sort of life and learning is around the learning aspects of things, but also student support, accommodation, all those sorts of things, policy and politics and strategic insights. You'll find full descriptions of the sub-themes on the website for the conference, and you'll be asked to select one when you go in, when you do your proposal. I'm now going to talk about the review and selection criteria. So this is what the committee uses to review and score your proposals. It's really important that you listen to this and you think about this when you're crafting your proposal. And I'm going to address 7 main things in this category of review and selection criteria. I'm going to start with number 7. We're going to do a countdown of the key things. So this one's around the relevance to international education. the proposal actually has to appeal specifically to people involved in international education and working in this space, not just education in general. And sometimes, one of the most common reasons for rejection is that the proposal is not specific to international education. It's too general, and it's not related at all to the profession of international education. So your topic has to be clear, it has to be relevant, and it's really important that it addresses at least one of the key interest areas, which I'll get to later, and maybe appeals to one or more of the sectors that are involved in international education. And I'll talk about them later. At number 6 in my countdown is innovation and originality. This again is really important. The presentation has got to introduce new information or new ideas or new ways of doing things, not just repeating something that we already know and that's widely accessible out there. There's a lot of free webinars, a lot of free things out there at the moment. So it's got to be something unique and important and relevant. A proposal that might stand out in this space is one that has never been presented at AIEC before or at another conference, or something where perhaps you're launching research findings at the AIEC. That's going to have strong appeal. And as I said, the common reasons for rejection of proposals is the information is already widely known or it's readily accessible, there's not enough new information in there, and so on. At number 5 in our countdown is applicability and solutions orientated. So by that we mean the session's got to sort of cover the latest concepts and techniques and tools that are illustrated by practical applications. So it gives delegates ideas, information that they can take away and apply in their daily jobs. It should showcase good practice, and as I said, it should be solutions-based if at all possible. A proposal that really stands out is a proposal that is around problem solving. So it might be there's a clear problem issue that the person was dealing with and showcases how it was solved and examples of how others can solve similar problems. Some reasons for rejection is a proposal might be interesting, but it's not necessarily practical or could be applied to someone's daily work. Number 4 is insightfulness. So presentations need to cover more than just a description of something. It has to show insight. It needs to draw out what was learnt. It needs to recommend new approaches or tweaks to the way we do things, recommendations around policy or future actions. So just keep that in mind. It's not just a description, we did this and this is what it looked like. There needs to be some insight that's able to be drawn out of that. At number 3, in terms of the selection criteria, is the quality of research or the methodology. Now, it's really important that if you're presenting data, it's from evidence-based research. It's also from, a good sample. Research that only has, 10, 20 participants in it may not get up. So it needs to have hard evidence base. Common reasons for rejection under this particular criteria are that the proposal doesn't indicate how many people were surveyed, when they were surveyed. The other common reason for rejection is the research hasn't actually been done. It might be planned or intended and it's a good idea, but we need to know if it's definitely going ahead. We also need to know, will the data and the information be ready by the time of the conference? Now, there's a tip here we can give you. In the proposal form, when you're filling it out, there's an additional information section. In there, you can give that sort of explanation because there's not really enough room in the abstract area or the outline, but additional information you can tease out and give us that information we need about the research. Now to number 2, it's around the speaker's expertise. It's really important that whoever is speaking in the sessions has demonstrated experience in the key interest area or the particular topic or both. We're looking for experts and leaders in the field, and not necessarily just from international education. It can be leaders and experts from other professions outside of international education, but from whom we can learn. So we need to have that demonstrated expertise and experience. Some of the reasons proposals get rejected is there's not enough information about the speakers, or the information about the speakers is incomplete, or speakers haven't been identified, or speaker profiles are missing, like the bios, etc. They're things that we really need to be across. Now, number one, in my backwards counting, we can't have sales pitches. I'm really sorry, but the conference, AIEC, has a non-commercial policy, and you need to adhere to that if you're submitting a proposal. So proposals and presentations can't be just profiling a company or profiling an application that you think might be, of interest to international education. So the common reason for rejection under this particular criterion is it's a sales pitch. So it can't be a sales pitch. So then if we sum up the selection criteria, you can see the 7 there. They are really important, and one is not more important than the other. They are equally important, and the reviewers will give equal credit to all of them. So you can read about them on the website. If you go to the aiec.idp.com, there will be information there about the review process and the selection criteria. There will also be a list of tips that will help make your proposal stand out. And there will be a list of common reasons why proposals get rejected. So it's a good double check, I think. So that's it from me for now. Josephine, have you any questions at the moment coming through?
Yeah, there's a few. I've been answering some directly, typing the answers because they're quick ones around word counts and things like that. But there's a couple of interesting ones. Maybe I just throw them to you now, Louise, and then we can answer the rest later. Okay. So one question from Sandia Buris, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is around the quality of the research. If it's a pilot program and numbers are small, is that still okay?
Oh, look, it really depends on the nature of the research, the size of the pilot, the findings of the pilot, and the next stages that you've got in mind. So I wouldn't rule it out straight away, but it does need to be rigorous. It does need to be rigorous.
And may I just add to that, one way to not get around it is to actually use the additional information field in the proposal to provide additional context for what that pilot program is, so that we can understand exactly why the numbers are small, and that might actually be okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So another question from Serin. Does the presentation have to be on research, or can it be on method, delivery, or other aspects of international delivery?
It doesn't need to be on research at all, and maybe we didn't make that quite clear enough. Look, a lot of the proposals that we get for AIEC are based on research, but not all. There can be case studies, there can be all sorts of theoretical approaches that have been applied, practical applications, practical solutions to problems and issues. Examples of good practice and why it's good practice. So no, it doesn't have to be research-based.
Great, thank you. And Nicholas is asking, when is the deadline? So the deadline is Friday, 7th of May. So you still have about 10 days to get a proposal in. So let's remind everyone of that deadline, 7th of May.
So not long.
So not long. Okay. All right, fantastic. Okay, so we have this thing called key interest areas at the conference, and we've been referring to that a few times already. Louise, do you want to tell us a little bit more what we mean by key interest areas?
Okay, so look, the key interest areas are the broad categories that help the committee plan a diverse and balanced program that meets all of the interests that are quite varied across international education. Each key interest area will appeal to a particular group of people, like a target audience or a network. Addie, maybe we could have the next slide up, because that will sort of help people understand. So some of the key interest areas, as you'll see here, if you're members of the International Education Association of Australia, will align to their special interest groups, their professional networks, and some align to particular sectors, as you can see, the English language, schools, vocational ed, higher ed, and so on. So we use these to make sure that there's something in the program for everybody. and that we've got a really good balance. Most people working in international education are going to be aligned with the specialities that we've got listed there. So when you submit your proposal, you're going to be asked, as I said at the beginning, to say, what sub-theme does it relate to? What sector does it relate to? And what key interest area does it relate to? And sometimes it relates to more than one, and there's an opportunity to say, what other key interest areas does it relate to? If you work outside of the international education sector and you're thinking of putting in a proposal, just jump onto the website, because there's pretty good descriptions of each of the key interest areas and what we sometimes call tracks or streams, and that will give you a good sense of what's required. Josephine, do you want to sort of talk about why this is important for the call for proposals?
Yeah, sure, Louise. And I do stress that some of these terms that you'll see under each description will be familiar to most people working in international education. But but there are slight differences with other countries or other conferences. So if this is your first time submitting a proposal for AIEC, or if you work outside of the sector, it is very important that you understand who the target audience is, so that you can pitch the proposal correctly. And eventually, if you get accepted, that you can then also tailor your session to that particular target audience. I will say that the topics that we have listed on the website is intended as a guide. There is a lot of crossover. So this is not a black and white kind of science, but it does help, as Louise mentioned, to understand these key interest areas, because it allows us to filter the program and to assign your proposal to the correct reviewer. So we want the subject matter experts in each of these key interest areas to actually review your proposal and consider your proposal for inclusion in the program. So, and by subject matter experts and reviewers, we're referring to the program committee members. They're all represented. They each have one track that they look after. And also there are other reviews from the steering committee and of course, Louise and myself. So on that proposal, if we can just go to the next slide, when you log in online, there will be a section around key interest areas, and you'll see 4 questions. And I think Louise has already alerted to that. We ask that you first tell us what broad sector this is referring to. You might want to say it covers all the sectors, and that's absolutely fine. Then we ask you to do a single choice key interest area, just select one, and then the next one you can select more than one. And finally, the 4th question is more of an open-ended question, which is a field that allows you to give us more information. Who is the intended audience for this proposal? I think it's really important that you take the time to think about this, because I think some proposals don't make that clear, and so reviewers don't really know what the value is of that proposal. So it's really important that you understand and you think and you craft your proposals thinking of the audience that you're going to be speaking to. And also, there's no right or wrong answer. Some people think that because they take everything, it's going to be better. In fact, we actually like to have a balance of, of sessions in the program that cater to all sectors, but we actually do sometimes go out of our way to make sure that there's at least one session that is specific to each of these groups. So there's no need to tick everything, thinking that you've got better chances to get accepted because it's more widely cross-sectoral or across these areas. So I think that's it for me. Of course, I'm sure there'll be more questions. Happy to answer more in detail at the end of the presentation. A reminder again to submit through the Q&A. And Louise, let's move on now to session types. There have been a few changes this year because of this hybrid format that we're going for. Can you tell us a little bit more about what session types we have this year at the conference?
I will do my best. So look, basically this year with the hybrid event, we're calling for proposals for 3 types of sessions. So you can see them there. One of them is quite new, which is the Inspire videos. And the Inspire videos are 5-minute sessions, and it's your chance to be super duper creative. You can do whatever you want with an Inspire video. The video itself doesn't have to be ready for the call for proposals. What we need is what the outline is, what you're planning to do, and so on. So it could be a short film, it could be an animation, it could be a voiced over PowerPoint presentation, it could be an interview with 1 or 2 people. Just get those creative juices flowing. And the idea with the Inspire videos is they're going to be conversation starters, and which will hopefully lead to brain dates, which Josephine, you're going to talk about in a minute, right? So I'm not going to talk a lot about brain dates now, but some of you may be familiar with the brain dates that we ran last year. The other session is what we're just calling a single session. It's a 30-minute presentation, about 20 minutes in terms of content download, and then leaving 10 minutes for Q&A with the audience, discussion with the audience. You can also opt for a double session. The way that double sessions will work will be 30 plus 30, basically, with a 15-minute break in the middle. So we use the first 30 minutes for the content download, and then the second 30 minutes for a more interactive approach. That might be a roundtable discussion, it might be a facilitated Q&A, etc. And this year you don't need to worry about nominating chairs for your session. We will provide you with a chairperson for your particular session. Now, as Josephine's already mentioned, all of your proposals have to be submitted by the online XCD system. That's just, you don't need to know it's called XCD, but it's called XCD. It's the program we use, but if you've got to submit online. And a reminder, Joe just said, the proposals close on Friday, the 7th of May. Not sure that I've missed anything there, but just keep in mind the double sessions are really for the deeper dive. Like if you can't do it in the 5 minutes or 30 minutes, or you need the double session. We're also saying really for the 30-minute sessions, each of them 2 speakers, no more than 2 speakers. It's just not enough time. So you're going to have to think very carefully about how that might work. All right, so you've heard about the selection criteria. You've heard about, and the review process that we go through, heard about the key interest areas and the sub-themes, and you've got a little bit of idea about session types. I think Josephine is now going to sort of give you the top 10 tips for submitting a successful proposal. At the end of that, we'll have a bit of an open discussion Q&A. So get your questions in via the Q&A, and we will start having a more interactive session with you once Jo's gone through her top tips. Over to you, Josephine.
Thanks, Louise. And I can already see some really good questions in the box there. So looking forward to getting to that in a few minutes. So yes, I have top 10 tips. Now we could have done top 100 tips, but we really needed to focus on the top 10 so that we could finish this presentation in time. So I'm going to go through them. Some of them might sound really obvious, but in fact, we see some of these do's and don'ts coming through the call all the time, and it does sometimes have an impact on whether your proposal is going to be accepted or not. So here we go. We're also counting down from 10, and they're not in any particular order of importance. So I'm going to start with number 10. Now, number 10 relates a little bit to what Louise was just talking about with the sessions. It's about picking the right session type for your content. So this is probably one of the most important things that that we get. And Louise, you know how sometimes we get some really great ideas, and unfortunately, you know, we just can't justify a full 60 or 75 minute slot in the program, and they would have been accepted if they had gone for a shorter time slot, or they had selected a different type of format. So we do ask you to think very carefully about how much content is going to be relevant, and to really think about less is more, really. So, you know, if you're, for example, pick a 30-minute session if you think you can do your presentation in, say, 10 or 15 minutes, and also include Q&A in that slot. If you have a deep dive, right? You have several speakers from several presentations, from several organizations, or you want to present a different angle from different country perspectives, or you want to, I don't know, identify certain areas of specialties within the same session, you might want to go for a deep dive double session, which means you need to do all of your presentations in the first half, and then the second half, which is the second 30 minutes, will be dedicated to Q&A or roundtable discussion. So it's really important to think this through. Now, that's why the 5-minute videos are really fantastic, because they give you the platform and the ability to get that content through in a very short 5-minute span. Remember, people online really don't have great attention span, so 5 short, to the point presentation would be great. If you get accepted for a 5-minute Inspire video, you then will be asked to do 2 brain dates. And Louise was talking about this earlier. A brain date is basically an online conversation between 6 or 7 people. So there's more information on the website. We ask that you actually go and check out some of these videos. But the idea is that video will be available on the platform for, I don't know, a week before the event. People will get to see that content, and then they can be directed to the online platform, which is the Brain Date Marketplace, and you will have hosted topics there. And so you can continue that conversation with people who are actually interested in knowing more about your program or your case study or even your research. So brain dates, you don't need to submit a proposal for a brain date. Anyone can host a brain date, anyone can post a topic, and that will happen for anyone who's registered for AIEC. The difference is not everyone is going to have a video and a conversation started in the brain date, in the virtual platform. Now, Inspire videos are also great for international presenters, like I said, because they're pre-recorded and they don't need to be time slotted. For, if there's issues with time difference and things like that, you can then, create your brain dates, and you decide what time and what date you actually want to host those brain dates. Okay. All right, so I'm sure there's going to be more questions around that. I'm going to continue on with top tip number 9. This is ensure your title can stand alone. So what does this mean? Well, basically, in this case, do judge a book by its cover. And we actually recommend that you use keywords in your title that will reflect the content of your session. So delegates don't always read beyond the title, so it's really important to get those keywords in there. Don't use the theme unnecessarily. I can't tell you how many times we find the theme embedded into a title, and it makes it very confusing because then all the titles are the same. Be original, but also don't overdo it and be too obscure or too quirky that we actually lose sight of what the actual proposal or the actual session is about. Okay, moving on, top tip number 8. So this is about writing a strong abstract and how to write a strong abstract. Think of the abstract as the movie description on Netflix, or the voiceover in a movie trailer, or the inside cover book. It must catch people's attention with enough information and convince them to attend your session, right, or watch your video. But it must not reveal everything. Okay, so do set the scene and offer context. So what's the challenge that you're trying to solve? What's the issue at hand? Also explain the method. So how did you go about solving that? How many people did you survey? If you've presented this at previous AIECs, what's different about it this year? And also, if appropriate, relate it to the theme or the sub-theme, but only if appropriate. Don't try to force that. Don't mention presenters' names in the abstract, and also don't list the specific details on how you're going to run the session. That is too much detail for the abstract. You can use the outline for that purpose. All right, top tip number 7. Now, this one, I would say, if there's one that's really important, Louise, I think this one is one of my most important ones. So clearly articulate the learning outcomes of your session. Now, this helps the program committee understand the key objective and the value for the audience. So it's very connected to what we were talking about before about the target audience and understanding who who your audience is. So this is about what is the value, what is the target audience going to get out of your session. All right, it's really often overlooked by people submitting a proposal, but it is one of the most important fields in the online form. Now ask yourselves this: when the audience leaves the room, whether it's the physical room or the virtual room at the conference, what will they take away from this session? What will they have learned? And what will they say to others about what they learned in their session? Okay, so it's not about what did you learn from your survey, it's about what the audience is going to learn from your presentation. Often we have people actually telling us what the actual learning objectives are from the session. So, sorry, from the survey. So that's not what we want. We don't want to reveal that. We want people to go to your session to find that out. Okay.
It's really just the key takeaways. What are they going to take away to
Exactly.
add to their toolkit afterwards?
Yeah. And also you don't have to have 5 objectives or 10 takeaways, even just one, as long as it's clear and it's well articulated. That's really important. Okay. All right. So moving on, my next tip, number 6, is ensure that the title, the abstract, and the learning objectives, those are 3 fields in the online form, ensure that those 3 key fields accurately reflect what you will present in your session. So often we find that there's a disconnect between what people write in the title and the abstract in the learning objectives and then what they write in the session outline. So use the outline field in the proposal to explain how you will run your session, and then make sure it aligns with what you've described above. So especially for 30 minutes or 30 plus 30 minutes. So remember, we're talking about the single and double sessions. This is where you can explain how much time you'll be dedicating to the presentation side as opposed to the Q&A side. This might be where you explain in which order you're going to present the key points of your session. You might even want to mention which presenter is presenting what. You can use the outline for that purpose so that we can understand what your vision is for the actual day of the session. All right. So again, we really often find a huge disconnect with what someone writes in their outline and also what they actually have written above in the title and the abstract. Louise, is there anything you want to add here? Because I think this is an important point, and I'm hoping I'm.
Yeah, no, I think you covered that well, Jo. I don't have anything to add.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, let's move on to tip number 5. Again, maybe I've changed my mind, Louise. I think this one's the most important one.
They're all important.
They're all important. Okay, so make sure that your speaker profiles is linked to your proposal. And what I mean by this is, when you submit a proposal, you have to submit a proposal in 2 steps. First, you have to fill out an online questionnaire with, what we've been talking about: title, abstract, outline, key and gist areas. That's your actual step 1. Once you submit that, the system will then ask you to add speakers. And this is, you actually have the option to skip this second step. But if you skip it, what happens is the system will just have 1 speaker attached to your proposal, when in fact you might have 2 or 3 speakers that you're proposing. So make sure that all of your speakers have a user profile in XCD, and then make sure that you select the names from the drop-down menu when you're in step 2, so that you just select their names and then it links their names to your proposal. So what this means is, when the reviewer is reviewing your proposal, they'll see all the information in your proposal, and then they'll also get to see the speakers that you have nominated. All right. Really important to contact the speakers before you actually add them to the proposal. So we've had situations in the past where people just randomly added names just because they thought their proposal was going to be stronger, and then the speaker is unaware that they have been nominated or added. So it's really important that you get your permission, their permission. And just follow up on them as well to make sure that they've received the confirmation email. They might have changed emails and this email in the system is old or something like that. So make sure first that before you add them, you've asked for their permission, and then after you've added them, that they've actually received the confirmation email with a link so that they can actually also view the proposal. The system, and sorry if I'm getting a little bit too detailed here, I can answer more questions, and this will become more obvious when you log in and you follow the instructions, but the system will automatically assign whoever's submitting the proposal as a speaker. Okay, so a lot of times someone is submitting a proposal on behalf of someone else and they forget to remove themselves as a speaker. So if that's your case, if you're submitting a proposal for someone, you want to become the primary contact, you want to maintain the communications about, you know, next steps and all of that, that's okay. But if you're not a speaker, you need to remove yourself from the speaker. And again, you go into the step 2 and it's very easy. Just add another speaker and then remove yourself. Okay.
So can I interrupt for 1 second?
Yes.
Sorry, because we've got a question that's relating to what you're talking about, and I thought might raise it now. So David's just asking, can you have 2 speakers for a single session? I've said yes, but he's gone on to say he's noticed that on the create profile page that it doesn't appear to allow 2 presenters to be included. I thought you could. So David, we'll take that on notice, but just...
Yeah, I'll take that offline. I might need to check exactly what you mean. So you can't create 2 profiles. You have to create your own profile, but then on the actual form, you should be able to add more than 1. So we'll double check that and get back to you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I think I'll leave it there, and if there's more technical questions, we can answer them after I get through the next 4 tips. So my next tip, and this one is related to what I was talking about before about not forcing the theme into your abstract or your title. So if it doesn't come naturally, if the theme New Horizons doesn't come naturally, don't force it into your proposal. Yes, it used to be a selection criteria, but we decided a couple of years ago not to make it a selection criteria. So you're not going to lose points because you haven't specifically addressed the theme New Horizons.
And honestly, the program, we don't want every single session to have New Horizons in the title. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. We're far more interested in the actual content and the topic and making sure that, you know, your speakers are subject matter experts and that the target audience is clearly identified. Number 3. Now, again, this might seem obvious, but I can't tell you how appallingly written some of these proposals that we have received. Now, a typo here or there is not going to be a grounds for rejection, okay? And even grammar mistakes, we're not going to reject proposals based on that. But, you know, a well-written proposal with no spelling mistakes shows care and shows respect. And it also shows that you will likely show the same attention to detail when you're preparing your actual presentation for your session. So we do ask that you take 5-10 minutes to, you know, get someone to read the content with fresh eyes, or submit it, you know, a couple of days prior, leave it for a couple of days and go back in and read it again. So really it's an important one. If you can get it proofread by someone, that's even better. Okay. Top tip number 2, this is again related to the previous one, but prepare it in advance. Don't leave it to the last minute. Okay, there's a lot of information that we're asking that you put in. It's actually a lot of work, and we know that you know, it takes time and dedication, and so we want you to just realize that there's a lot of detail that you need to put in. So things like you know, speaker bios, research information. So really reach out to your speakers early on to get their approvals, that they're happy to present, that they're available to present. you know, get them to log in themselves directly into XCD, and they can update their own user profile, so you don't have to bother about doing it. They can do it themselves. They can upload their own images. It's very user friendly, but it takes a little bit of time. And like I said before, just, you know, taking a couple of days off and then going back in again to edit and do a final check actually does go a long way. And finally, my top tip number 1 is read session abstracts from previous conferences. And I've put a link in there on the website. If you go to past-conferences, you'll actually have access to actually quite a few presentations and PowerPoints from previous conferences, but also you'll see from 2019, you'll have access to the full online program. So it's actually really good to see, you know, what kind of information and what kind of topics have been covered in the past, especially if this is your first time, you know, attending or presenting AIEC. But it's also good, you can see how people actually have written the abstracts and how they've articulated their, you know, their learning objectives. So and there's also the highlights review document, which is useful so that you can see what kind of topics and priorities we've put into previous programs. So that's my last tip, Louise. I think I might just do a quick recap of the top 10. And like I said, you can read more about this on our website. There's some more information in writing. And yeah, Louise, what do you think? Do we have some time for some questions?
I hope so, because we've got quite a few questions that have come in.
Okay.
One of the ones is around, and I might just answer this directly. Someone has asked whether if they had submitted for 2020 conference, and it, you know, the conference got postponed, can they just resubmit the same one, or is it still sitting in the system? The answer is no, it's not still sitting in the system necessarily. You would have to resubmit and make sure that whatever you're submitting is sort of relevant to the context that we find ourselves in, I think, and looking forward to the future.
Yeah.
And Jo, there's another one someone's asked, and you might like to answer this. Can you submit for more than one format?
Yeah, sorry, can I just clarify on the previous one? The proposal is actually sitting in, so we do still have a record of that submission, but as you pointed out, it's a completely different module. So you have to resubmit through the 2021 portal. So it's a completely new link, completely new module that we're using. So so that's just to clarify. But in terms of submitting for more than one format, that would mean that you would have to submit more than one submission. So each submission gets assigned an ID, a reference number. So if you wanted to submit a similar topic, but for 2 different formats, you have to do 2 submissions and it will be considered for 2. Now, that's obvious because the outline will be completely different. The learning objectives might be different if you're submitting for a 5-minute or a 30-minute or a, you know, 30 plus 30. However, in saying that, you can submit for a 30-minute if that's your first preference, and then there will be a next question that will say, if you don't get accepted for 30 minutes, would you consider presenting this as a 5-minute Inspire video? If you tick yes, it's not that we're going to, you know, disregard your first choice. We know that your first preference is a 30-minute slot, but you are willing to do a 5-minute if that's not possible. And if that's the case, we would then get in touch with you and ask you to either update the existing abstract or resubmit a completely new one, because obviously we'll need to change that up a little bit for the program.
And sort of related to that question, Jo, is another one, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who asked this, but if you submit for a double session, so 30 plus 30, will you automatically be considered for a 30-minute if we don't accept it for the double?
That's probably more a question for you, Louise. I think the answer is
no.
No.
You really need to think carefully about what session format. Now, keep in mind too, this year with the hybrid format, look, it's always quality in terms of the AIEC, but even more so this year, it's going to be very, very competitive. So unless you have a real hot potato that you think everybody needs to know and will be really enthusiastic about, that's what we're going to reserve those double sessions for. The really hard-hitting, super important, super inspiring sessions. So just think carefully, and so it's not a matter of covering all of your options that, look, I'm going to submit this and maybe they'll think about me for a single, or maybe they'll think about me for an inspire. No, you need to think carefully about what you think will work best and what you think will have legs, I suppose. Jo, a question for you.
Yeah, sorry, can I just add to that, Louise? I would actually also say that things that would go a long way would be if it's an exclusive research that you're presenting only at AIEC for AIEC delegates. That would be something that we would see very favorably, or if it's being launched at AIEC, I think that would go a long way. But yeah, absolutely, we wouldn't automatically consider it for a 30-minute.
And I'm just going to throw another question at you, Jo. Profile of the expected attendees.
Yes, well, there is a good resource already on the website, and I don't know if Addie can put in the link. It's aiec.idp.com/who-attends. So this will give you an idea of who attended 2019. So you'll see the split by state, by key interest area, by sector, by position. So it's a good indication of who's attended in the past. Of course, it's anyone's guess of how many people will be attending physically or virtually this year, but it's a good place to start.
You happy for me to keep going?
Yeah, but maybe you can answer some. How about you answer one? Yeah.
So there's a question from Vicky. For the 30-minute sessions, do you have a preference as to whether there are 1 or 2 speakers? The answer is no. Up to 2 speakers is fine. You've also asked some conferences where there are multiple speakers, there is a preference for them to come from different national contexts. Is that a factor of AIEC? It's not really. It's not a factor. It depends on the topic, really. Like if you're talking about, state and territory strategies, then yes, maybe we want some different national context. So it really just depends on the topic. It's not something that we say as a selection criteria, though.
Louise, I have a good question from Ainsley. So Ainsley is asking, is there a preference for presentations from across different countries, for example, trans-Tasman? I think this is a really good question because this year we are encouraging our friends from across the Tasman to participate in AIEC. So I know that the program committee are building some sessions with that in mind. We're already thinking of content for both an Australian and New Zealand audience. So absolutely, we encourage proposals that show what's happening in other destinations, as well as presentations that cover multiple destinations. So the answer is yes, we encourage it. I don't know that we would prefer it, but we definitely will want to include that important content.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there was another question, and I'm sorry, there's so many questions I've forgotten who asked it, but it was about how would chairs be selected and what's the role of the chair. Chairs will be selected by the program committee. They probably will be members of the program committee or members of the IEAA professional networks. So we will select someone who has knowledge and expertise in that particular field. And the role of the chair is to introduce the speakers, to make sure you keep to time, and to facilitate the discussion at the end of the session.
Yeah, and also the reason this year we're assigning chairs is because of the complexity around the broadcast, live streaming, and all the technical implications that goes behind. I understand that for some proposals, this might not be, you want to have your own facilitator. So I'd suggest maybe for the for a 30 plus 30 minute session, it's possible that one of the speakers could be a co-facilitator for the second part of the session, but we would still have a representative from the program committee or the steering committee to actually at the very least MC that session. So hopefully that answers the question there.
And just keep in mind, everyone, I'm not sure if I stressed it enough, but with those double sessions as well, we really want to see, if you're going for a double session, that second 30 minutes is interactive, that it engages with the audience in some way, because that's going to be really important. We're all desperate for that sort of interactivity within the profession, and the 30+30 sessions provide for that. Jo, we're being asked to the recording of this webinar. I'm assuming it'll be available on the website.
Yeah, we're hoping it'll be available from tomorrow afternoon, maybe in the morning, but we'll be sending out an email to everyone who's registered for the webinar once it's up and available on the website. Yeah.
Okay. And someone else is saying the link to the previous abstracts, they can't find it on the website.
Okay, I'll put that in the.
We'll fix that. Yeah, in the chat. Maybe pop that into the chat.
I will.
I'm just trying to see if I've missed any questions. That seems to be, oh, okay. Can we apply to just become a chair? No, sorry.
Look,
that for an answer.
How about this? If you're interested in chairing, I do suggest that you go into our database and create a user profile. So at least have all of your information at the ready. So you know, your position, your organization, and a bio, and in the bio just include, you know, what your topics are or what you're interested in. So at least we have that on record. We do occasionally need last minute speakers or presenters that we, you know, for whatever reason there's been a last minute cancellation, and we do look at people who have already registered for the conference, and we do refer back to XCD to see what their profile is and where they work, so that we can really match them to the right panels. So I'd say please make sure that you even if you're not planning on submitting a proposal, you can still have a user profile in there, and make sure that it's updated.
And look, if you're a member of one of the IEAA networks, approach your network chair or head, I can't remember what they're called. They're the people to speak to, because then they will know when we go to those networks and we're looking for chairs that you volunteered and you're keen. One last thing, Joan, I know you talked about it, but the terms and conditions, just make sure you familiarise yourself with them when you submit a proposal, because we do expect speakers still pay the registration fee for the conference. There are speaker rates if you do get accepted, but that's often a question we get down the track, that there's an assumption that speakers will be able to register for nothing, but that is not the case.
Yeah, and there is a really good discount for registrations for speakers. So you can go on the website under call for proposals. There's actually a section that says speaker information. So there's a lot of information there around expectations of speakers and also the speaker fees. I don't know them off the top of my head, but it's all listed on the website. And I think it's important here to say as well that we want to make this year as stress-free as we can. So one of the things that we have decided is if you register to attend in person, which is of course our preference, we want to be able to connect and see everyone in person this year. If you register for an in-person registration, and for whatever reason, knock on wood, this doesn't happen, but if for whatever reason we do have to move online and there's a lockdown or borders are closed and you cannot make it to the conference, we will convert that registration from in-person to virtual and reimburse the difference. So we will do everything we can to then move your presentation to an online delivery and work with you. So of course we're hoping that that doesn't happen, but we want to make sure that you have that assurance that even if you register for an in-person registration, that you're not going to miss out if you can't make it for reasons beyond.
Same for speakers. If speakers have been accepted and there's restrictions. So yeah. One last question from Elizabeth, which I think is really important, is when will we notify them about papers being accepted?
Yeah.
We've got about a minute to go, I think, 2 minutes.
Yeah. So the plan is to finalize the review and the selection by the end of June, but we typically find that we need a couple of extra weeks just sometimes to follow up with speakers and missing information. So I would say probably mid-July is the earliest that we would be able to notify anyone. I know it's last minute, but there's a lot of complexities this year because we have to look at all of the different variations, you know, who's presenting online, time differences and things like that. So it's likely that we'll have to also be planning on the schedule because we need to see if it's actually possible or not. So I'd say mid-July to late July is
about
when.
Right. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Well, look, I can't see any more questions up there, Josephine. So we've obviously done a really good job.
Okay, pat on the back. I feel we have rushed it. I feel there is quite a bit of information that we might have forgotten, but I do want to let everyone know that there is the inbox, so you can send your emails to aiec@idp.com if you've got a question. If it's a technical problem, especially with Exceed, and you can't get in or you can't log in, just send an email to that particular inbox, and we'll follow it up. Put as much information as you can, like sometimes screenshots and things like that help us troubleshoot the problem. And if you have any specific questions or you need more guidance, happy for you to also send an email to that particular inbox. Reminder, the webinar will be uploaded tomorrow to the website. And another reminder that the deadline is the 7th of May.
Get them in.
Yeah, you don't have to do a full video or a full presentation. It's not about that. It's about giving us a clear understanding of what your vision is for that session. What are you proposing? What is going to be the learning objectives? And look, we really look forward to meeting on the Gold Coast. We're all very excited. We know people are doing it tough out there. You know, we really, especially our international friends, you know, we hope that you're staying safe, that you're staying well, and we hope that you will be able to join us virtually if you can't in person. And we will do everything that we can to make this AIEC again this year and connect with everyone. So we're really looking forward to your ideas, your proposals, your content. There's going to be lots to talk about this year. And yeah, I'm really excited about it.
And it's just a really good chance to reconnect. And I think we're all desperate for that. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for spending the time with us. And we'll see you on the Gold Coast, hopefully, either in person or on a screen.
Or on a screen. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.